Welcome to another edition of our Beat Diabetes Books and Quotes series, and we're going to continue to look at the book Pure, White, and Deadly by John Yudkin. This book was published first in 1972, a long time ago, and there was a controversy way back in those ancient days as to what's causing all the heart attacks and strokes. America was seeing a surge, and ultimately the world joined in. A surge of heart attacks, a surge of strokes, and a surge of diabetes. What's the problem? Ancel Keys decided he knew the answer to the problem. He decided the problem was saturated fat. We're eating too much meat, too much fat, cut the meat, and everything will be fine. And this guy, John Yudkin, had a bone to pick with Ancel Keys, and he said, no, it is the sugar. Sugar is the deadly food that is killing us, if you want to call it a food. He says the subtitle, How Sugar is Killing Us and What We Can Do to Stop It. Well, the answer's, that's kind of an obvious thought. What can you do to stop sugar from killing you? Well, how about stop eating sugar, right? But at the time, this was controversial, and people thought he was crazy. And Ancel mocked him, made fun of him, ridiculed him. And Ancel Keys was a much better showman, and he controlled the public, and he won the popularity contest. He didn't have the facts on his side, but he had the personality on his side. And so Yudkin decreased, and Ancel Keys increased. And so the whole world bought into the idea that our problem was saturated fat, and soon we were telling our school children don't eat so much fat, and diabetics don't eat so much fat. If you'll just eat healthy whole grain carbs, all will be well. And of course, that was not the answer. So anyway, we're going to get to a couple more of his quotes. He talks about sugar. One of the things that I don't so much care about his approach is that he talks only about sugar, and very few diabetics are going to become non-diabetic by simply focusing only on sugar. You've got to cut the carbs all the way across the board, and that means the starches as well, the breakfast cereals and the potatoes and the rice, and basically anything that says carb, you're going to cut it down. The green leafy vegetables and the low carb vegetables like broccoli and cauliflower and all of those kinds of things. Go to your grocery store, produce department, look for green stuff, or in the case of cauliflower, white stuff. Those are going to be fine, and you can almost eat as much as you want. But so many of the grains and potatoes and rice and so forth, they just are not going to be good for you, and they're going to keep you from beating diabetes. Anyway, Yudkin says two problems with sugar. He says the first thing to know is that there's no physiological requirement for sugar. Well, absolutely right. There is no requirement. You know, you cannot say to little Johnny, you've got to get your daily sugar. Some people say, well, Johnny's sleepy. Johnny's not got much pep. Let's give him some sugar, right? No. He may have a little pep for the next hour, and then he may have no pep at all 2 hours later. And that's typically what carbs do. They will spike you, and your blood sugar will go up, and then it'll go down, and you'll crash, and it's a problem. The second point I want to focus on, however, a little bit more, he says, secondly, if only a small fraction of what is already known about the effects of sugar were to be revealed in relation to any other material used as a food additive, that material would be promptly banned. Well, I just think that is so right on, so exactly right. When you consider how evil sugar is, how much damage it does. If it was new on the market and somebody just came up with, hey, I've just found this great thing called sugar, and they knew what it could do like we know today, most of us do, they'd ban it. They would not allow sugar to be on the market. But it's been on so long, there's no way you're going to get it off. There is absolutely no way you're going to, you can write your congressman and you can protest and hold up a sign. Doesn't matter. Sugar is here for the indefinite future to stay. Maybe in some enlightened age, centuries later, they will see it so clearly they will ban it, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. So the answer is the world's not going to ban sugar. United States is not going to ban sugar, nor is Britain, nor is Japan, or anywhere else. But you can ban it from your own life. And that's what you've got to do. You've got to ban sugar. Don't wait for your government to come along and make the store stop selling it. That's not going to happen in your lifetime. But you can sure make it happen for you. And that's what you have to do. All right, well, let's look at another of his quotes. In this case, he says, the prevalence of diabetes is more closely related to the amount of dietary sugar than to dietary fat. He says, when I related the number of people dying of diabetes in different countries to the amount of sugar or fat that was eaten some 20 years earlier, I found a high correlation with sugar and no correlation with fat. So he says, I look back 20 years to see what they were changing, what they were doing, what they were eating. And then I fast forwarded 20 years to now, and I find that when they ate more fat, it didn't affect anything. But when they ate more sugar, it related to heart disease. It related to diabetes. It related to all kinds of problems. Sugar and carbs. A lot of people, they understand properly that fatty liver is a problem, but they assume because it's fatty liver, it must come from eating too much fat. So if you eat a steak with a lot of fat in it, or you eat an avocado, or you eat any kind of meat with a lot of fat, saturated fat, boom, that fat just goes straight to your liver, baby. And next thing you know, you got fatty liver. Well, that may sound right, but it's not. It's not true. It is carbs and sugars that create the fatty liver. And the body converts that sugar into fat in your liver. We understand that now. They didn't understand it a long time ago, but John Yudkin did. He got it. So anyway, he was almost a prophet when it comes to diet. He understood the problem was sugar. He didn't quite get as far as I can see. Now, maybe if I read more carefully, I would read a little bit about it, but his main thing was sugar. Today, white flour is just about equally evil. You can't give sugar a free pass. Give white flour a free pass and condemn sugar. They're both the same. And brown flour is not much better. So basically, the grains are the evil guys. They are the bad guys that are creating misery. All right, one more quote and we'll close it up for this edition. He talks about a professor named Cohen who did research on rats. So Professor Cohen showed that when they ate a high amount of sugar, up to 67% sugar in their diet, they would become insulin resistant in about 3 weeks. They could go from totally normal little rats to insulin resistant little rats in 3 short weeks when they ate 67% sugar. Now, if they did it with only 40% sugar in their diet, it took them longer. It took them 6 weeks to become insulin resistant. They still got there, but they didn't get there as fast. So depending on how much sugar they ate, that's how quickly they could become insulin resistant. And if they cut it down some more, 33% sugar, about a third of their diet, their little rat diet was sugar, it took them 13 weeks to become insulin resistant. But in any case, by adding significant sugar to their diet, he could turn normal rats into insulin-resistant rats. Well, do you suppose maybe that's true with people? By adding a lot of sugar and white flour that's going to turn into sugar and potatoes that are going to turn into sugar and all kinds of other things until we're just loading our bodies with sugar? We can become insulin resistant. And the more we eat this way, the more insulin resistant we become, and the quicker we become insulin resistant. Now, here's an interesting fact. He says the glucose tolerance recovered after a few days on the normal diet. So when he takes the sugar away and gives them normal rat food, whatever that is, their insulin resistance goes away and they become normal. He reverses their diabetes, you might say, when they eat normally. But listen to this. When sugar feeding was resumed, it deteriorated again, but this time after only a few days. Do you get that? So you give them a lot of sugar, they become insulin resistant, basically diabetic little rats. And the more sugar you give them, the quicker they get there. You want to get to become a diabetic very, very quickly. Eat a lot of sugar and white flour that turns into sugar. He takes it all away, and they go on a crash diet of healthier foods with no sugar. And they lose their insulin resistance and become normal. But when he takes those same rats that have crossed over the line to diabetes, and then they've come back because they're no longer eating the sugar, and he gives them more sugar diet, they cross over again, but this time it is lightning fast. They don't just have to wait 3 or 6 or 13 weeks to become little diabetic rats. They become diabetic rats within days because they've already crossed that line. And that's why a lot of times when we cross over the line into diabetes and then we reverse it by going to a low-carb diet with time-restricted eating, and we cut out the sugar and cut out the white flour and cut out the grains and the pastas, etc., and we reverse it all and we become non-diabetic, if we ever go back to where we came from, it may not, it may have taken us 20 years to get to become diabetic to start with, but if we ever reverse it and then we go back to eating the old diet, the sugary diet, the diet made up of a lot of flour and pasta and so forth, we'll get back in a hurry to diabetes. So that's something apparently you can't do too much about except just don't go back. Some people will almost mock us. They will mock us, saying, well, yeah, but if you went back to eating the normal diet, quote, normal diet, then you'd be diabetic again. Yeah, probably so, but who says I've got to do that? And the smart thing is you don't. So these little rats crossed the line, came back, give them more sugar, crossed the line again, lightning fast. So the smart thing to do is pull back, cut out the junk from your diet. And then once you go back over the boundary line of diabetes into non-diabetes, don't go back to the old way of eating. Don't congratulate yourself and say, well, man, my A1C is so good, I'm going to go out and have me a big piece of cake and ice cream. No, don't do that. Stay with the victory, my friend, for the rest of your years. You'll be glad you did. The question that so many people have about us is how in the world did you guys get to know each other? How did you get together? Well, the answer is found in Benedicta's new autobiography, When Destiny Calls. In fact, we do something in that autobiography that is almost never done. We each have a chapter sharing from our own perspective how we got together and how we first got to know each other. So she tells her side of it, I tell my side of it, and then it goes on with the rest of her autobiography. And the whole autobiography is exciting. It's a lot of drama and a lot of good stuff. But I think you'll find it interesting to know how it was that God brought us together. So there'll be a link in the description about how you can get this book on Amazon, either as an ebook or a paperback.